Though she was beginning to show signs of illness, Evita returned to work almost immediately after the Rainbow Tour. She resumed her position as editor of the Argentine newspaper and began to focus on fulfilling her promises to the descamisados. Social welfare in Argentina was highly underdeveloped before Juan Perón was elected president. Evita, a former child of poverty, was very conscious of this. In fact, she has been noted as saying that when the rich think about the poor, they have poor ideas. This stems from the fact that prior to the reign of Peronism, it was customary for the wives of the Argentine aristocracy to carry out charitable works throughout the country. This group was known as the Society of Beneficence, and over time it became less about charity and more about social status. Traditionally, the First Lady of Argentina was asked to lead the society as their president. However, the aristocracy was so strongly opposed to Evita that they denied her the title. In retaliation, Evita disbanded the Society of Beneficence, and in July of 1948 created the Fundación Eva Perón. The Fundación Eva Perón built and furnished houses for the poor and homeless, showered the children of Argentina with toys and gifts, answered the prayers of many impoverished Argentine families, provided free health care to all citizens, established residences to care for the orphans of Argentina, and built nearly 1,000 schools in the poorest areas of the country. Within Argentina, Evita's foundation was both praised for its multitude of good deeds and criticized for its often lofty goals. Evita never kept track of money that came into or went out of the foundation, and this left quite a bit of room for error. Many people questioned the source of the money and the means by which it was obtained. In fact, Evita forced and required workers to donate 1 day's pay to her foundation. It was later discovered that 70% of the money donated to the foundation came from the workers themselves. Many people throughout Argentina claim that Evita's grandiose plans, lack of accounting, and extreme demands were proof of her frivolity with money. In 1955, the fall of Peronism brought with it the end of the Eva Perón Foundation. However, in the 1970s, warehouses full of goods intended for the Argentine poor were still being discovered throughout the country. And though she had died nearly 20 years earlier, many people use this extreme waste as another criticism of Evita Perón and her foundation. Evita not only contributed to the poor of Argentina, but to the women as well. During the 1946 presidential election, Evita created the Female Peronist Party. And, as she stepped into her role as the First Lady of Argentina, Evita became an integral component in the women's suffrage movement. As a result, on September 23rd of 1947, a law was passed giving women the right to vote. Even today, Evita is remembered as a champion for women in Argentina. Most recently, she was remembered for her early suffrage efforts, as a vote was passed on October 31st of 2012 to lower the voting age to 16. Perhaps this progress and upcoming election evoke Evita's memory because she had such an incredible influence on the women of Argentina. During the 1951 elections, women were candidates for every national legislative office in Argentina. During those same elections, nearly 4 million women voted for the very first time. And by 1952, there were 500,000 members of the Female Peronist Party, with 3,600 headquarters throughout the country. And these were the first Argentine women to be truly active in politics. Through her actions and rhetoric, Evita encouraged these women to have a voice in politics and in society. In 1951, after 4 years as the head of state, Juan Perón decided to run for his second term as the Argentine president. In an unprecedented move, and to the dismay of his advisors, he chose Evita to join him as his running mate and vice presidential candidate. This move was fiercely opposed by military leaders. They were angered by her increasing power in the government and saw this move as a threat. Juan and Evita, however, were supported by the Peronists, the working class, and unions. To show their support, a mass crowd of over 2 million people rallied in front of the Ministry of Public Works and begged Evita to announce her candidacy. At this rally, an interesting dialogue developed between Evita and the Descamisados. Initially, Evita claimed that she would not seek out the vice presidency, but that she would continue to work for the people of Argentina. The Descamisados disagreed with this notion and cried out for Evita to stand by Juan as both his wife and vice president. The Descamisados desperately wanted Evita to claim the title. This conversation continued between Evita and the crowd for quite some time. Evita eventually gave in and accepted their nomination. Evita Perón had just become the first female vice presidential nominee. On August 22nd of 1951, just days after announcing her intent to become the vice president of Argentina, Evita was forced to renounce her nomination. Again, Evita found herself standing on the balcony at the Ministry of Public Works, with a massive crowd gathered below her. This time, however, she would not tell them what they wanted to hear. Evita's renunciamiento was a grave disappointment for the Descamisados. Evita informed her fellow Peronist that she was renouncing her nomination in order to better serve the Descamisados and the people of Argentina. And while this appeared to be a very humble and selfless act, many people believe that Evita renounced the candidacy for two main reasons. First, by late 1951, Evita knew that she was very ill. And secondly, Juan Perón at this time was under a great deal of pressure from both his advisors and military leaders. And though she stepped down, Evita proved to be an unstoppable force in both the campaign and election of 1952. In fact, Evita was so dedicated to Perón's cause that she made sure to vote for him from her hospital bed. This vote was incredibly important to Evita because this was the first election in which Argentine women could vote. And on June 4th of 1952, Evita and Juan Perón celebrated his re-election. A few days later, Juan Perón honored his wife by giving her the title of spiritual leader of the nation. As previously noted, by late 1951, Evita knew that she was very ill. However, she and Juan went to great lengths to hide this from the public. The couple also opted to attack Evita's illness with the same passion and vigor that had kept them in office. At this time, Evita had been diagnosed with uterine cancer, and in 1951 underwent radical surgery to have a hysterectomy. The uterine cancer, however, had spread to her lungs, and as a result, Evita became the first Argentine woman to undergo chemotherapy. Despite the advanced treatments that were available to Evita, she soon became emaciated, and in June of 1952, she weighed only 79 pounds. And this was the same month in which Juan Perón was re-elected, but Evita refused to be left out of the celebration. After his win, Juan Perón was paraded through the streets of Argentina, and Evita appeared to be standing by his side. However, what the people of Argentina did not know was that Evita was unable to bear her own weight at this time, and was being held upright by a support system that had been specially installed in the car for her. On that ride, she wore a heavy fur coat to hide her thin frame and the structure that was helping her to stand. And this would be Evita's last public appearance, as she died on July 26th of 1952. Perhaps one of Evita's greatest fears was that after her death, she would be forgotten. In order to honor his wife, Juan Perón went to great extremes to, quite literally, preserve her memory. From the time of her death until 1954, Dr. Pedro Ara worked to perfectly preserve Evita's body. And from 1954 until 1955, Evita's body was placed on display for the people of Argentina. In 1955, when Perón's government was overthrown, Evita's body was immediately removed from public view. Her body was then flown to Italy, where it remained hidden for over 16 years. In 1971, when Juan Perón was once again gaining support from the Argentine people, Evita's body was returned to him in Spain, where he had been living in exile. And in 1973, Juan Perón returned to Argentina and claimed the presidency once again. In 1974, Juan Perón died while in office, and Evita's body was returned to her family and later buried in La Recoleta in the Duarte family tomb. Today, Evita's memory remains alive and well for many Argentine families, especially those who benefited from the works of the Eva Perón Foundation. Most recently, Evita was honored with a 100 peso bill in Argentina. This currency is the first in Argentina to feature a woman and commemorates the 60th anniversary of her death. And though she's been gone for 60 years, many people are still debating if Evita Perón is a sinner or a saint. The choice is yours to make. However, there is no disputing the fact that Evita Perón made both outstanding and outlandish contributions to Argentina in her short lifetime. From the dirt roads of Los Todos to the balcony of the Casa Rosada, Evita Perón left her unmistakable mark on Argentine society as well as Latin America and the world.